tell you just a little bit about what we're doing. So I'm the Associate Director of the Institute for Systems Biology in Seattle, which is Lee Hood's institute, better known, I suppose, by that. So the Institute for Systems Biology, and I'm going to tell you some of the work that we're doing in health. So just to start, this is a picture of Larry Smarr, who some of you know well. So Larry is the head of the San Diego Supercomputing Center, but has also become not the poster child, but the poster man, let's say, for the quantified self movement. This is a cover of his from Technology Review, MIT's Technology Review a few years ago. And Larry had an interesting story. So Larry has been following his body in a huge amount of detail for about 15 years now. And so he's tracked a lot of markers, and I spoke at UCSD a short time ago, and he'll take you to a room that has a wall of, about twice as big as the one in this room, where you can see all of his data outlaid. It's his favorite toy that he gets from his supercomputing center. And so basically, though, he had an interesting experience, which is that the markers that he'd been tracking for a long time jumped up significantly. He had access to a lot of biologists and computer scientists and so forth. And he comes into his doctor and he says, I think I have inflammatory bowel disease. And his doctor says, how do you feel? He says, I feel fine, but look at these charts. He says, well, then there's nothing we can do to help you. He goes to a few different doctors, gets the same response. That's not really a critique of the doctors. That's just the way our healthcare system is set up. We respond to symptoms for the most part. And so anyway, he went home. A few months later, he has an acute episode. He ends up going to the emergency room, and he gets diagnosed with IBD. And so that's an anecdote, or it's a story. It could have come out differently, of course. But I think it's evocative of the kind of information that may be there in our bodies that presages disease before it happens. So what we wanted to do was to take this experience of Larry's and translate this to a lot of people so that we could get real rigorous science and data behind it. So in 2014, Lee Hood and I announced a project that we called the 100K Wellness Project. This was a very ambitious goal. Essentially, it announced that we were going to recruit 100,000 individuals, do whole genome sequencing on everyone, and then over the course of the next couple of decades, monitor multiple times per year proteins, metabolites, microbiomes, wearable devices, and so forth to build what we call dense dynamic personal data clouds to mine them for the early warning signs for all the major human diseases as a resource to develop approaches to predict and prevent them. So very grandiose. I remember talking about this with Lee, and at that time, I'm a quantitative guy, so a quick estimate is very easily between $1 and $10 billion project. At the time, we had raised $0, so that seemed kind of audacious to announce. But what's been really incredible about working with Lee and on the project is that we actually think we're going to be able to go a lot bigger than this now. So the way that we did that, we tried public financing. Of course, for something like this, you lobby Congress for $4 or $5 billion. You'll be shocked to know we did not get that. But basically, what we've done instead is to take two different approaches. And this is to create an industry that we call scientific wellness. So for the current healthcare industry, we spend about $4 trillion a year on healthcare. IOM, now the National Academy of Medicine, estimates that about 97 to 98% of our healthcare dollars are spent on care after illness. And so what we see is the rise of an industry that's focused more on optimizing wellness, trying to reduce disease. You heard a number of things from the functional medicine perspective from Robin. But basically, there's a wellness industry, but it's an industry that has a dubious reputation. There's a lot of pseudoscience that's involved in that. And so what we see our brand as scientific wellness is the leveraging of all this immense information that we can get in order to really build a scientific basis for that. So what we ended up doing then was a project to launch this all. So this was a small-scale pilot project of 100 individuals that we call the Pioneer 100. So this was 108 individuals. Was initially going to be 100. We kept having, let's just say, people we really wanted in the study that kept asking to get in, and so we amped it up. And so what we did then, and this is in a, so this is all under review. It'll come out shortly, hopefully, in the scientific literature. But basically what we've got here is whole genome sequencing on everybody. So you get millions of SNPs differences between individuals. We have labs. So we're talking about a large number of metabolites, about 700, 400 proteins, 150 clinical chemistries. We also measure gut microbiome. These are all done 3 times per year. And then also wearable devices, Fitbits and things like that that we've got. So we integrate all that information together. We did a longitudinal study over 9 months. And the idea here was to prototype for individuals, if we got this much data, if we did analysis on it, could we identify actionable possibilities that would have an impact on those people's health? And it turned out that that was very successful. I don't have a lot of time to jump into it, but we were able to reverse disease in a number of cases for people. We helped them optimize a number of elements of their health, and most of them said that this was one of the great health experiences of their lives. So based on that then, and to get us towards this goal of where we wanted to get in terms of predicting, preventing disease, optimizing wellness, we've taken 2 different paths. So one is that Lee and I, along with our CEO, Clayton Lewis, co-founded a company called Aerovale. We started Aerovale a year ago. It's operationalizing the wellness portion of this, so it's a scientific wellness company. We started a year ago. We've raised $40 million for it. We have 110 employees at the company. And so this is, and what's really remarkable about that is that we have a partnership between that company and ISB, where if they check a box saying that their data can be used anonymously for research, that all comes in for us to analyze and look for metrics for wellness, for early warning signs for disease, and so forth. And so far, about 92% of individuals who have come through have checked that box. So almost everyone has allowed us to do that. So that's been really important. The other really big development this year is that our institute became an affiliate of Providence Health and Services, which is the 3rd largest healthcare system in the country. Lee Hood has now become the chief science officer for that system. So what we have now is an integrated ecosystem where we have a scientific wellness company that's bringing in already tens of millions of dollars worth of data where we can, of omics data that we can analyze. We have a wellness coaching model which gives us longitudinal integration with these people, so we have up to daily contact with them in some cases. And then that data comes in, and then on the Providence side, we can action on trials that we're looking at right now around Alzheimer's prevention programs, around diabetes prevention and reversal programs, around a cancer survivorship wellness program, and all those kind of things. So it gives us a really interesting ecosystem in which to try to drive what we see as the future of healthcare. That's it for me.
A slide, but anyway, I'm Andy Kogelnick. I'm the founder and CEO of the Open Medicine Institute, which we started about 5 years ago when I left Stanford after 8 years here looking at sort of the intersection of omics and clinical care. And in doing that, we realized there was this huge gap, and I think a number of the speakers have hit on that already here today, where standard of care medicine really isn't looking at all the tools and all the data that we have, and that those tools and that data set is rapidly evolving. And you know, you've seen a couple of different approaches already into that. But one of the things that we really wanted to do that's a little bit different from what you've heard about so far today was apply that directly and bring the clinical space back together with the research space, and particularly around diseases that were difficult to diagnose and treat. So we have a couple of different partnerships, but one of them is with rarediseases.org, and one of their favorite taglines that I like is that all of us have a rare disease, which means we don't have a standard of care around most of the diseases that we see. Even diabetes is about 100 different diseases, many of which are thought to be autoimmune, some of which may not be. So we took that approach to take, you know, all the data that we can grab, both clinical, from the patient, from the physician, from the hospital, from the insurer, from the wellness programs, but also from the scientists, from the omicists, from the lab, and put them together in a platform. So you've heard again some of this already from others, so I'm not going to repeat it in the interest of time. But taking, you know, active functional data, Fitbits and the like, dashboarding them, but then also combining it with omic data, like you just heard Nathan talking about. So gene chips, gene expression, microbiome, and those kinds of measurements. And really, what we wanted to do was put in a social context a place where that was a neutral sort of safe harbor for anyone to come in and play and put their data. So whether all you have is, you know, your temperature measurement for the last 3 weeks, great, fine, put it in. But a lot of people, like Larry, we work with Larry as well, has 7 years worth of data around his journey through healthcare and beyond, actually. So how do you start aggregating that data in a way that anybody can play? So we have a very patient-centric mission. We have both a nonprofit and a community benefits corp that are working together on this. But within that, we created a platform called OpenMedNet where you can literally import data from any EMR, from pretty much any of your own data. If you have an Excel spreadsheet, that kind of stuff, you can upload it and look at that data, and we're working with different partners to do that. This is actually Larry's data that you just heard about. And you know, these are some of the spikes that Nathan was just talking about. And so this is his sort of 7-year journey. And you know, with that group, they dove into the stool samples that he collected along the way. And that was part of the way that they worked towards identifying a profile around that disease. We take diseases like that and chronic fatigue and others and look at that journey and focus in on before and after treatments and say, okay, let's get a measurement right before you're treated or at your baseline when you're well, preferably. That's always nice, but we don't always get the advantage of that because we don't have a $40 million Aravail behind us. But, but we actually focus in and working with the community docs so that we get measurements before, during, and after treatments. So we have a network of community docs that's nationwide and actually international now. We have a network of phlebotomists that give us samples to go along with that nationwide, so we can actually draw blood anywhere in the US now, and we've actually done sample collection from outside the US as well. So we have a data repository and as well as a sample repository. We're looking at diseases and building consortia with different centers around lupus and Lyme disease and IBS and so forth. And I'll just stop there, but happy to take questions.
Questions. Who has one? Yes.